Hi, I'm Andy Monnin, and hey, one of the pastors here at the Valley Church. And hey, I shared with you about a week ago that I was going to show you how to lay brick. My dad was a brick mason. His name was Andy Monnin. He was from Russia, and he was a one-man band most of his life. He did brick, block, and stone. Really, we laid up a lot of houses. Did a lot of fireplaces. He was really an artist with brick and stone, especially. That's mostly what he did. And I picked up a few of those things. All of us kids hod carried for him. There were 5 of us. We all did hod carry, and that was really the gopher, right? In doing the setup, mixing mortar, bringing brick, striking and raking, just all the things. Picking up paper, it was a little bit of everything. But we learned a lot. And I probably shared this, maybe I didn't. When we got to the end of the year, if you were the one working with Dad, if you had worked that summer, we got a bonus. And the bonus was we got to go to Duff's. It was an all-you-can-eat place in Piqua, and the more you ate, the bigger your bonus was, and the bigger you got too. But hey, those are the fond memories. We started when we were probably 10, 12, and worked all the way through high school. And I remember, man, we were lifting bricks, and that was the best workout. You were basically lifting weights all day. And so I'm not sure that's a sales pitch for being a hod carrier, because it is hard work. But anyway, I want to show you some of the tools, and then we're going to move on to how to lay brick. I'm working on a project where we put in some doors and windows, and I've been doing a lot of the work ourselves, not all of it, but some of it. And one of the things I had to do was to cut out some of the existing brick, and so that we could put these new doors and windows in. Now I've got to relay them back out, and actually cutting them out was quite a job. I used a grinder, an angle grinder, $70. DeWalt is my color. I like yellow, and DeWalt is just a great tool. And I don't get any money for that, by the way. I just like DeWalt. And so, hey, this is a grinder blade, diamond tip, probably 10, 12 bucks is what that thing, maybe 15. But it worked. Just 4-inch grinder blade worked really well. Now, when I had to cut these out, I had to actually cut the brick. I would grind about halfway through, score it with this, and then I went to a local rental company and actually got a much bigger blade to be able to go all the way through. But this thing, this was so much easier to handle. It scored well, and when I need to cut some of the mortar out, this thing does an extremely good job. The other thing is, when I have to cut bricks to make them fit, I've got to have some good edges. These bricks crack when you try to just use a chisel. When you score it with this and then chisel, it works just great. So the angle grinder was huge. But I'm going to show you a few of the tools that I use and you have to use when you're laying brick. The first is the trowel. Without that, you don't do anything. I'll show you how that thing works. But this is the trowel that I've used. You can see I put some tape around, starting to split. I probably pound a little more than I should. The good guys don't have to do that, but some of us amateurs who are learning to be good guys, we might. And anyway, the trowel, there are a couple other trowels. You can use a little baby one, so to speak. And here's another little trowel that's used to fill in the joints. And so if you don't get enough mortar in, you can use these together to do that. 2 other tools that are really important, well, actually, are the finishing tools. One is called a raker, and you'll see there's a little nail on the end, and you can set that nail to different depths. And so that's to create a finish on the brick. You can actually take this raker along. You see you got little wheels, and just make sure that you take it completely out. And that's one finish. Remember, Dad would always get on us if we didn't make sure that we got the mortar off the top and the bottom, didn't get a clean look. So anyway, be aware of that. These are strikers. Strikers actually give you the more rounded effect, and you'll do the bed joints and the head joints. You got to make sure you don't go in too far. It starts to look bad. But again, it's kind of preference. This joint, these strikers actually give you, or strikers give you the best finished joint. And the reason is it compresses the mortar, it kind of seals it in, and it's got a curve when you're done, or kind of a rounded curve, and that allows the water to flow off the brick. And in our cold winters here, if you use a rake joint and you make it too deep, water can sit in there and create ledges on that, or create ice on that ledges and pop brick. So you got to be real careful to go too deep. This is probably more recommended in our area, but everybody has a different look, and it really comes about the aesthetic that you want. What's interesting on these brick is that they actually, it doesn't look like they used either one of these 2 tools. They actually looks like maybe took the rough end and scraped out, because I can't get it to match any of the tools that I have. So very, very interesting. I'm just going to make it work. Two other tools you'll need for this. One is a 4-foot level. This is I've had this for 30 years, and man, it's just great level. You know, it's pretty high-end level. And again, it's just to check to make sure you're plumb up and down, you're level this way. You also probably need a 2-foot level for those places you can't get in. But I would say that the 4-foot level is more accurate, and so if you can ever use the 4-foot, use the 4-foot instead of the 2-foot. A couple other tools that you'll need, at least I've needed in this project, have been the hammer and the chisels. I've had to actually chisel a lot of the mortar off the bricks, and let me pull this back up here. Here's some of the bricks that we pulled off. You see a lot of mortar on, and so we've had to chisel that out. We've also used the screwdriver to take the brick out of the cores. Maybe I can show you a little bit better here, because when the mortar squeezes into those cores, that's what creates some of the adhesion and the strength in the wall. This chisel is one that you basically are going to put it on the joint and then pound it off, and I can show you that in a little bit. I like this chisel because I've hit my hand maybe about 10 times right here with the hammer. This thing protects you, so I would suggest something like that. Okay, well, that's a good start, and I'm going to go ahead and mix some mortar, and we'll do that next. Hey, so it's time to mix some mortar, and I went to our local brick and block company, Snyder Brick and Block, and bought some mortar. It comes in big bags, and actually, here's the hardest part of this project is trying to match the mortar color. Initially, we went with something called Old Colonial. It had more of a tan feel. We've had to go something that's a little bit wider, and so what I've done is actually mix both colors together to try to create the right color match. It's difficult when you're trying to match old brick, and here's the deal. When you lay the brick, the mortar is going to be a darker color, and it's going to cure out to a lighter color. The problem is you don't exactly know where it's going to land. You can look at samples, but it's all a little bit different. Right now I don't have a perfect match. I'm going to try and go a little lighter, and I think we'll be okay. So here's when you take the mortar, you really have to have a consistency. It's really a ratio of 2 to 1. So you want 1 part, actually it's mortar mix, and 2 parts sand. And so I went and got bags of sand, brown sand, with the mortar mix. You put that in the wheelbarrow, and we're going to throw some water in there, and I'm going to mix this up now. One of the things you want to make sure is not to put too much water in, because that was always a mistake we would make early on, is we would put too much water when we were young, and we'd give soup to Dad. He couldn't lay brick with too soupy of a mud. Then you had to, it was just a mess. So don't do that. Add enough to get started, mix it together, and then see where you end up. When you're done, you want a consistency that allows you to move it pretty easily, but not too soupy. And I think that's a good mortar mix. I'm going to show you how to clean up some of the brick that we're working with here. You can see there's quite a bit of mortar in between and on the edges. And so we're going to use these chisels. This is a cold chisel, as they call it. And you can buy these Home Depot, wherever. A couple different sizes. I prefer the big one when I can. And the real trick is to place the chisel at the edge of the brick. There's a sharp side to it, and just give it a pretty good pound, and to score it along the way. Now that one came out pretty easy. Now this is probably going to be a little bit tougher deal, so let's try this one. We just put it right at the edge where the mortar's at and crack it, and again, these are coming off pretty good. So this has been helpful. That this mortar is I guess it's old enough that it's flaking off pretty good. And there, I just hit my finger. Highly recommend you don't do that. And so when we get to this place, that's really what you're doing, is just placing it upon the edge and hitting it a couple times. A lot of times it'll come off. If it doesn't, don't ever try to chisel this way. You'll just break the brick. Come along the edge this way, long ways, and you'll have a much better chance that the brick won't break in half. Now, again, we have the cores that are filled, and I've just been taking a big hammer or a hammer and a big screwdriver, and that has really cleaned out the cores. That's a clean brick using the chisel, and that'll prepare you to use them for relaying. Okay, we're going to go ahead and lay some brick. I'll show you, this is the mortar board I'm using. It's just some plywood. A trick, make sure you water it down pretty good, because otherwise the mortar sticks to it more. And you just want to work it up, make sure it's the right consistency. That should be what it looks like. And I'm going to go ahead and set that down. And one of the things I'm going to do before we get started laying a brick is use a wall tie. Wall ties look like this, and they're just what they imply. You actually bend them in the middle, and I'm using a screw. Some people would use nails, and actually what it does is it ties the brick to the wall. After the mortar sets, these are ribbed, and when the mortar sets, you'll see holes in as well. It makes sure that the wall adhere, or the brick veneer will adhere to the wall. There have been some cases where things have fallen off, and you'll see I have a temporary support here as well, since I don't have the whole brick wall with a lot of ties. I don't think there was as many ties in this wall as there probably should have been. So I'm adding a lot of ties. So I'm going to add a brick tie, and it's just that simple. You make a little L, it puts it in. Probably every 4 or 5 feet you'll want to put a brick tie in. Okay, we're going to go ahead and lay a brick. By the way, here's some of the bricks that we're looking at here. You'll notice they're different colors. This has more of a brown look. I don't know if you can see that. This is more of a red look, and this is more of an orange. So it's got a kind of a mixed bag. One of the things you want to make sure you do is select different color brick. Don't put all browns in a row, that kind of thing. And so once you get some mortar, and I'll go ahead and put that over here, you're just going to want to lay a bed right on there. And we're going to stick another one on there, kind of create a little bit of a furrow, if you will, and make sure it's filled out. If you don't have a good furrow, what happens is the mortar will not fill under the brick, and it is no fun to tuck point brick. So make sure you have a pretty good bed joint. This is called the bed joint, and the middle is the head joint. I can see that, hey, it looks like we're due for a red one here. And actually, we're going to be starting with a half brick in this case. And so you'll see I also have a nylon line stretched. There are wood blocks that you can buy. I have that at the end here. And it's a wood block that you wrap it around and just guide it. That's why I don't have to use a level. If I have existing brick wall, I can just match the existing courses using this nylon line. Now, make sure this is stretched pretty taut. If you have a long distance, it will tend to sag even though it looks strong, even though it looks tight. And so you got to put pretty good tension on it, or you will have a dip in the middle of your wall. Okay, so I'm going to take that brick, and what I'm really going to do is just guide it in place. And I'm following this line here on the black, and I just want to make sure, and I need to see what I'm doing here, wipe away some excess, is make sure that the brick actually comes to the end and follows the line. And when that happens, I've laid a brick. Let's see if we can try one more and see what happens here. Sometimes stuff happens and it doesn't stay on, but what you really do is you're slapping the mortar on the corner and on the head, and if you do it right, it'll stick there. And so if you kind of bring it in like this, dive it into place, you might have to hold this one, and then all you're doing is really kind of pulling it down. And if you can use your hand instead of pounding with the trowel, that's actually a better deal. And because you don't want to disrupt the courses that you have. And I'm basically right to the line there. So, hey, that's probably the best one all day. I'm going to take it, and maybe that's a good place to stop this part of the video. Okay, hey, we've been working at this a couple hours. You can see I've got about 4 courses laid here. Each course is a row of brick, and I have about 5 left to go up from here. And the mortar started to harden, and when it starts to harden, you got to put the finishing touches in before it gets too hard. I'm going to use the striking iron I talked about before. There are two ends. Each one has a different radius, if you will, and there's a bigger one, a smaller one. So depending on the size of the joint, both the bed joint and the head joint, you'll want to maybe adjust. If it's a larger joint, you're going to want to use the larger end. And so I'm just finishing these off. This seals the brick, and it pushes the mortar into place. Now, after I've done that, and by the way, when you're at the end, you want to always come in, because otherwise you'll pull the mortar out of the corner joints and it won't look so good, and then you got to replace it. Okay, so once you've done that, I'm only going to do the bottom two here because the other two are a little bit wetter, and I've really started to pick up pace here recently. But anyway, what I've noticed on the finish here is they went for a colonial look, which is essentially they've scraped out the mortar and give it a real rough look. And so I'm going to have to kind of make it up as I go. I don't know what tool they use, but in the end, that will be the finished look. And you can see it's very wet right now. It'll take days. In fact, it'll take weeks to cure out to hopefully match the other color. And so it will be a while before we really know. But anyway, that's what I know about laying brick. When we're all done, when it's cured out, with probably about 3 to 4 weeks. My dad used to use an acid bath. I'm not sure I'm going to go with acid, but we'll clean these bricks up, do some kind of a cleaning agent to get the residue of the mortar residue off the face of the bricks. It just has a nice clean look, and we should be good. So anyway, until next time, this is Andy Monnin from my house.